Hey, what's up, people? So earlier today, I went live and recorded a solar flare as it was happening. Right before I captured that solar flare, I captured the entire sun in detail. In fact, it's so detailed, it might be one of my most detailed ones ever, mainly due to the conditions when I shot it. So I figured, since I'm trying to get the hang of streaming more often, I would show you guys what it's like when I stitch these together. So I already kind of roughly aligned them, but now I'm going to precision align them, which is done by hand. Um, I use the difference blending mode in Photoshop and kind of get the panel as dark as possible. These features actually change so quickly that it'll never match perfectly, but it'll be close enough to where I stitch together the mosaic, it'll be fairly seamless. Um, so anyways, yeah, chat with me while I do it. I'm actually seeing some stacking artifacts here too. Sometimes those show up. But I got a ton of overlap in these panels. Like in many cases, more than 50% overlap in the panels, which means if I have a bad panel, I can actually just throw it out, which is good. Downside is I shot way more and it took me much longer than usual, so it was a lot more work. But you can see it's pretty dang detailed. Like, I mean, I'm seeing, pixels. Obviously you can see how big the sun is just by looking at this here. But if you zoom in, I mean, you're seeing pretty good details down to the pixel level. You can see the pixel grid there. Um, but yeah, pretty solid. I don't know if it's the best one I've done, but it's probably actually close. Um, I actually modified my telescope like 5 minutes before I shot this, specifically to try to make it sharper, because I saw the conditions were good, and it's at the expense of increasing the width of the bandpass. So like it was an ultra narrow bandpass, and I made it a little bit wider to allow a little bit more light in, which allowed me to get sharper details, but at the expense of the contrast of the image. So a little bit less contrast, but I can play around with editing and maybe get some of that back. So yeah, cool. So I guess I'll try to read what you guys are saying while I do this, which might be hard because this requires paying attention, and obviously reading your guys' comments is going to take away from that. But I'll do my best. Why do I have the animation window open? Let's close that. We definitely don't need this. Hate that thing too. So right now what I'm doing is I'm stitching together the stacked images. So each tile you see, so let me kind of back up here. So this is a tile. It's about 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. I think it's actually 1.3 megapixels is in each one of these tiles. This individual tile is a stack from 3,000 individual images. So I took 3,000 photos that look just like this, stacked them all together, and what that did was it got rid of all the noise and averaged out atmospheric distortion so I could then sharpen it. The result is I get a much sharper image than otherwise possible. And it's a pretty significant difference. Like it's like, yeah, it's huge. Oh, there it is. So I have to align with the surface features. So it requires looking for patterns and then matching those patterns. Like this one's easy because there's kind of this big filament right here. So I'll just kind of line it up and go, okay, until it turns dark, and then I'll know it's good. But ooh, this one's giving me trouble. Let's see. Oh, there we go. It's like a little puzzle. And I have to do this like 50 times. But it's kind of therapeutic. And while I'm doing this, it'll actually really stand out if I have a bad panel. I'll be able to go, ooh, that panel's not looking very good. And then I'll know I need to kind of get creative with how I stitch it together to eliminate the bad panel. People always ask me what computer specs I have. They're terrible. So I built this computer like, I don't know, like June 2020. Like right at like peak COVID, the prices of everything was skyrocketing, and my computer took a dump on me. So I built like it was kind of a poor man's build at the time because I wasn't like swimming in cash at the time either. So I kind of got away with some cheap stuff and paying the price for it now. I keep meaning to buy a new computer. In fact, uh, I've actually crowdsourced information for it before. I've kind of reached out on X and said, hey, if you got any advice about getting a computer, let me know. And people have like worked out builds for me and stuff, and I just haven't pulled the trigger yet because it's kind of expensive and stuff comes up financially. Mainly traveling for other shots. That's usually what comes up on what I spend all my money on. But if all it takes is like one really good print sale, maybe I can invest some money in a really nice rig. So hopefully you guys buy my prints. I'll read more of your comments now. You say the sun's coming up in Ireland at 2:45 a.m. That's too early for the sun to be coming up. Some of your comments crack me up. If I don't read your comment out loud, but it's funny, just know I chuckled quietly to myself. But some comments I'm not going to repeat. But I have kind of a twisted sense of humor, so I probably appreciate it, especially if it's like more messed up. People that follow me on Twitter or X, they're like, yeah, he has a messed up sense of humor. Okay, great question. What do you mean by conditions are good? So usually when I'm talking about conditions, I'm actually not talking about it being cloudy. When it's cloudy, I just don't shoot. But when it's clear, the conditions can be good, they can be terrible. And what it's actually referring to is generally the upper atmosphere and how the layers of the atmosphere are mixing together. That creates atmospheric turbulence, which affects atmospheric seeing. And that those seeing conditions are what affect how detailed my photos can be. So yeah, when I'm talking about conditions, it usually has to do with that seeing conditions. So the better the seeing conditions, the more details I can get on my work. Great question. Sorry, I get quiet and look because I scroll through comments. How many milliseconds per shot to take the shot? So my camera so the exposures were 6 milliseconds long, and they were basically shooting back to back to back to back. So it was shooting at about 110 photos per second, I think. Hold on. For this one. No, this one was a little higher than that. It was about 120 photos per second. So which comes out to like really close to every 6 milliseconds. It's like maybe every 8 milliseconds there was a shot taken. I don't know. Somebody do the math for me. I'm not gonna. I hate math. I'll do it, but I'm not happy about it. Nikolai, this is my main job. This is what I do. I play on Photoshop all day long, stitching together sun pics for a living. There's a lot more to it than that, but yeah, between my Patreon and doing print sales like every so often, I do one like every month or so. I'll sell like a favorite image in print or something I'm just like just particularly proud of. This sun image that I'm working on right now might actually end up in print because I think it's good enough. I have very high standards for what ends up in print. Or it's got to be like a special event. Like seeing the aurora, that was a special event. I was going to sell a print for that just so I could have one. And also so people could have one that experienced the event at the same time. Probably wanted something to remember it by. Great question. Do you have to adjust the exposure or contrast on panels to make them a single? Yes, I will show you how different this looks because it will look kind of janky at first. You'll look at it and be like, that's not going to make a good image. And I've got some like really gross examples of mosaics where the contrast was just all different between the panels. So with solar imaging in particular, you end up with reflections and uneven illumination, which mean these panels don't actually look good. Actually, I can stop it right now and show you what it looks like. So here we go. Change that to normal. So this actually is not bad. As far as solar mosaics go, this is actually really well matching. And it was because of that modification I did at the last second to change the contrast. But you still see these seams. So these seams still have to get matched. But this is close enough to where a lot of the default settings in Photoshop for mosaic blending will actually work to stitch this together. So what I'm looking at though is contrast or like details. So you see how it's like a little bit sharper on this panel than this panel? That is the bigger issue for me. And I have to go in and fix that by hand. So, and I will. I'll show you how I do it. This actually borderline over sharpened, but I don't hate how it looks, so I'll probably leave it. Yeah, see how it goes from sharp to soft? That's no good. That's no good if I want to put something in print. So I'll have to fix that. And I can. It's just a little bit of work. There we go. Back to difference blending. So what I do is I put these in a difference blending mode, which allows me to orient them like very precisely. So in difference blending, if you take two identical photos and lay them on top of each other, they just turn black. So the darker this overlap period is, the more accurately this panel is lined up. And I'm able to get like, pretty much pixel perfect accuracy with alignment. It's not going to be perfect because the sun's moving between panels. The surface of the sun is just constantly churning and moving and everything. But I get it close enough to where you won't be able to tell once I stitch it together. Other questions we got? So I noticed the turnout for the stream isn't as high as it was earlier, and probably because I didn't have a clickbaity caption like, hey, the sun's blowing up. Instead, it's just like, watch me tinker with Photoshop for hours. But so many people ask about how I do this, so I figured, it was interesting enough to where people are curious about it. But yeah, this is how I stitch them together. I spend a lot of time at my desk just kind of going through, orienting each panel, and this also gives me, like I said, like a very good intimate look at them. I can compare, how sharp each panel is, and make individual contrast adjustments to them to make sure they match. But there's a lot that goes into this. This one's tricky because there's like the tiniest little sliver of overlap. There we go. I gave it more overlap. I gave these panels so much overlap that I could literally just like throw away a panel and be fine. It's just a good practice while you're shooting a mosaic to just have a lot of cushion. Otherwise, if you do end up with a panel that's not salvageable, like it's say the conditions were too bad while I was shooting it, inconsistent, there was tracking errors or something, I'm able to, just basically throw it out and use the panels around it to fill in the missing space. Hey, Caleb, I don't need your money that bad. That's funny. I do appreciate your comments, though. Keep it up. Did anybody watch that Starstream launch today? Sorry. God, now I can't remember the name of it. I got Starstream stuck in my head. The new Boeing rocket. There was a new crewed flight that was supposed to go out today. Starliner, that's the one. I said the wrong thing. Anyways, the Starliner launch was scrubbed. It prompted a lot of people to kind of talk crap about Boeing, just because Boeing's had a lot of negative press lately. But honestly, I think this capsule's probably incredibly well built. I think what's changed mostly are the standards for safety. So they now have so many systems to analyze faults that if there was like a remote possibility of something going wrong, it can get flagged by a computer, which then, of course, halts the countdown, and then they can go in and check things out. It doesn't mean the thing was going to blow up. It just meant that the chances of something going wrong were high enough to prompt an abort. Now, if it was a different craft, they might not have even detected that anomaly, and as a result, it would have launched anyway, and it might have been fine. But my point here is, before you dunk on Boeing because they had a door fly off their airplane, just keep in mind, man, NASA holds them to very, very high standards. They would not allow shoddy workmanship on a crewed capsule that's going to space. They simply would not allow it. They have all kinds of checks for these things. And yeah, it's easy to say Dragon is doing great because Dragon is doing great. But it doesn't hurt to have more crewed capsules launching from American soil. I would love to see even more than that. Give SpaceX some competition. I think SpaceX even wants the competition. Elon's talked about it all the time. He said he wants this competition working on reusable rockets and so on. So, but anyways, yeah. If you're wondering what my take is on Starliner, I think it's awesome. I think the ULA rocket's awesome. It's going to launch. It's going to be successful. Just they have very, very high safety standards, as they should. There's human lives in that thing. This isn't the 60s. We're not just going to strap people to the top of an explosive rocket and launch them into space. What's the size of each original picture? Every single one of them is 1.3 megapixels. Because it's a 1100 by 1100 pixel wide square that I was shooting with. I tend to not have conversations with the moon and the sun, but great question. A lot of people do talk to the moon. What is going on? That's way up here. There it is. I don't know why that one decided to be way up there for me. I'm sure this is like watching paint dry to some of you. So sorry if it's not a more interesting stream than when the sun was blowing up earlier. But I figure if I'm doing it, may as well chat with you guys while I'm doing it. How many hours do you think it'll take me to finish this image? Well, this took me about 30 minutes to shoot. Actually, you know what? I can tell you exactly how long. 15 to 41. So it took me about 25 minutes to shoot it. 25, 26 minutes. This part will probably take me, I don't know, it took about an hour for everything to stack like that, but that was just software working, and I was doing other stuff during, so it doesn't really count. This part right here, just stitching them together usually takes me like 20, 30 minutes, and I'm like right at the 20-minute mark with the stream, which is when I started. So, and then after that, I'm going to work on getting each panel matching. I'll add color to it. Color does not take very long. I'll actually do that on the stream. I'll show you guys how I add color to these, because I think it's interesting. And that's when it starts to look like a fiery sun pick. So it's like more the instant gratification of the imaging. This part is not instant gratification. This part's very tedious. Okay, that's all the panels. I got them all. So let's look back. So you can see all the chaos. That's all the panels I aligned. All right, cool. I changed the blending mode back to normal. So this is usually where I go in and mess with the contrast of individual panels and try to get the sharpness to match. But just for the sake of making this live more entertaining, I'm going to go ahead and make it in color right now. So first I changed the screen mode of Photoshop to color. It was in black and white. Now I add a curves adjustment. So what I do is I increase the reds in the curves. I decrease the blues in the curves. And look at that, we got some fire. So now I want to add a touch of yellow to the highlights. So I increase the green in the high part of the curves. And I want to make it a little more red in the shadows. So I drop the green there. And there you go. You now have a color sun image. Now, is this accurate color? No, it is not, for a bunch of reasons. So obviously, the sun is white. You look up, you see white. It's the sun is white. That's the photosphere. The photosphere is filtered out in these images because what I'm looking at here is the chromosphere. So I have to completely filter out the photosphere, which reveals the chromosphere, which is actually red. It's like a pinkish red color. And I can show you what it looks like. Now, let's go. And I got to go more saturated than that. It's like that, maybe. Except the limb darkening is reversed here. So it would actually be darker on the edges. I can kind of simulate that here. Sorry, it'll come back. All right, kind of simulate. Ignore the outside. But this is very close to how it looks visually. So when you're looking at through the telescope, these active regions show up as brighter, and these filaments show up as darker. And the limb darkening is dark. But then, of course, out here, you have the blackness of space. The reason it's inverted like I have it is because these prominences are actually so faint. So these prominences are much fainter than this part of the sun. And since they're so faint, what I do is I brighten the outside here, and then that completely washes out the inside. So then I make a curves adjustment that brings down the tones in the disk, which makes it inverted. I can show that in detail in one of my lives later if you want. But that's how you get this inverted look, which is how you make the sun look more furry. And it shows these filaments in what I think is a little more three-dimensionally. So you get a much better dimension to the sun photo. The downside is it inverts sunspots, but I think they look cool like this, so I like it. But yeah, there's some of the secret sauce behind my solar images. So I'm going to check this out and see if I can get rid of some of these bad panels. Oh, so there you go. I just got rid of one bad panel. Yeah, there's a bit of a discrepancy between some of these, but that's okay. We'll get to it. This one's probably better than that one. Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, that one's probably better. Okay, I got rid of one bad panel. That's probably a good start. Oh, whoops, I didn't need to move it. Turn off auto select here. What's going on down here? I've got a soft panel there. Can I get rid of it and make it a little bit sharper? Ooh, I can. Look at that. So shooting with the overlapping panels was really paying off here. Let's get rid of this one. Oh, sharper. All right, I like where this is going. The next one? Oh, that's that one. There we go. That one's a little better. And what about this one? Oh, maybe a little bit better. Yeah, these are getting a little bit better. Yeah, not bad. My dog is like right next to me, just whining because it's 20 minutes till she eats. She's staring at me like locked eyes with me. Will you feed me, Andrew? So cool. So I will keep working this. I'm not gonna like go into the nitty gritty during the live because honestly, it's pretty boring, and I don't want this to seem as awful as it can be. But I'm glad I was able to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes here because I pour a lot of my heart into these, and it's really nice to be able to show off some of the work that I do. Oh yeah, that one's kind of soft too. Oh yeah, that's better. Yeah, this is looking probably even better than the giant one I have behind me. I have this giant Sunspurt behind me. It's like 5 feet tall, and it was just like a test print, but it's this massive print I did of the sun. And at the time, it was my most detailed ever. I think this one might be better. It might be. I'll have to look at it closely, but I think the details are a little bit more consistent across the entire disk, and there's more activity. Like, look at all this. You've got how many active regions? Let's count them. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 active regions? Maybe? I don't know if this one counts. This one's kind of pathetic. I don't know if this one counts either, so maybe it's only 7 active regions, but I can see what's officially cataloged on spaceweather.com, and they'll have like numbers associated with them and everything, so I don't have to guess. But this is a very, very active photo of the sun. Yeah, some of that one's bad. That's okay. Yeah, I think it'll end up being not only one of my sharpest, but one of my most active photos of the sun, just because there is so much going on here. And by the way, this whole thing is actually flipped. Wait, whoops, I do it here. Let's just flip the whole thing, shall we? So there you go. I just flipped it. It's at a slight angle. I can actually fix that a little bit with the crop tool here. That is about right. Maybe a little more over. Yeah, it's probably about there. And the reason I know this is because there's 2 lines on the sun, right where, so you see where these the crop lines are. So you have these 2 bands at the kind of like these like if you separate the sun into thirds and you just visualize the barrier between these thirds as bands, that's where all the activity kind of flows through. These active regions follow that. It's just an area where the magnetic fields tend to tangle up. I don't remember what their scientific name is, but if I crop to here to this rotation, that would be about right. It's just slightly off because the rotation of my camera, and it was backwards because of where I was in the meridian flip. But there it is. That's this is the active region that caused all the aurora when it was on its first trip around the sun. Now it's on the second trip, and it's about to face us again. You can see it's moving from left to right. So when it was right here in the middle of the sun, like pointed dead on at Earth, was when it flared like 6 times, and we got all those aurora. So maybe you'll do it again. I don't know. We'll see. Cool. So I'm going to look at some comments, answer questions, and then I am going to feed my dog because she's staring at me and she's hungry. And then I'll probably go somewhere else. Why should NASA and SpaceX part ways? NASA is a SpaceX customer, and they are, arguably the reason SpaceX is able to do everything that they're doing. And SpaceX has done absolutely wonderful things. Like so I'm about to go to the 4th Starship flight. I leave in a couple days for that, and this is the ship I plan on flying on myself because they will get the cost down enough that we'll be able to launch civilians for relatively inexpensively. And speaking of that, I see Simon's comment here on Instagram. He said, "What are your thoughts on Dear Moon being canceled?" I think it's really sad, but it was also kind of inevitable. I don't want to share what I've heard like from the inside from people that are very closely involved with that. But it didn't sound to me like it was as serious as it could have been, and that's a shame. my heart goes out to the people that were involved. I've talked to a lot of the people that were, either slated to go or runners up to go. They ended up getting replaced, and I can't imagine the feeling of thinking you were going to the moon and then losing that opportunity. Like, I just can't even imagine. Like an Apollo 18 crew, for example, like they must have been so gutted. They're like, oh, we're going to go on the moon. It's awesome. And then the program gets nixed. They're probably the only other people in history that know what these people are going through. To just look up at the moon, knowing you could have been so close to it and losing that opportunity. I would just be so gutted. I would be so depressed. And I just feel so badly for these people that got jerked around through those missions. So it will not be the only one of its kind. There will be other opportunities like Dear Moon. So I think it's just, you know what? The first one was a little rough, and that's okay. There's going to be other opportunities. I'm going to keep reading comments for a minute, and then I'll duck out of here. Yeah, doing a puzzle with the sun. It is like a puzzle. I grew up doing puzzles, so it's probably like why I like this. I always did like the big giant ones, the 1,000-piece ones and up. People are asking me about Aurora. I have to say, since I know it's not going to see Aurora, or sorry, since I know it's not going to see Arizona, I haven't been checking the Aurora forecast. I thought tonight was supposed to be a good night though, but I would, check whatever Aurora app is local to you. So if you're in northern latitudes, my guess is you'll see Aurora, but I don't know for sure. I'm still just scrolling through comments, guys, if you wonder why I'm just staring. Not a ton of questions. Vince asked, can you explain and point out what an active region is? Yeah, an active region is just an area of the sun with heightened magnetic field activity. And usually these are what spawn sunspots. Sometimes they don't spawn sunspots, and but then sometimes they spawn flares, which then lead to coronal mass ejections. So these active regions are what we keep an eye on when we're looking for solar activity. But here's a massive one right here. I don't know how well you can actually see my cursor, so let's just, I have an idea. I will draw a big white square and then cut out the middle of it, and then use this to highlight things. Ah, shoot. No, I forgot I had auto select layers on, so I lost it. That's the worst. All right, there we go. So this active region right here, this was what caused all of the aurora 3 weeks ago. So the magnetic field disturbed the convective process of the sun, which ended up resulting in some flares. Those flares launched coronal mass ejections, which impacted the Earth's magnetosphere, which guided those particles to ionize in our atmosphere and produce those pretty colors. Now, this is a particularly large active region. And in fact, I'm not even like kind of covering the whole thing. There we go. There is another active region up here that's pretty big. And then we have some smaller ones. That's an active region. That's a smaller one. That one's even smaller. And then we have a teeny tiny one right there. And I think, is that it? That's kind of it. Yeah. So anyways, that's what an active region is. And that's what they do. That's why they're interesting to look at. So yeah, but these areas will, hopefully put on more of a show for us. Maybe we'll see some more flares tomorrow. People asking if this will affect our planet. No, it will not, unless you're a ham radio operator or aurora chaser. Cool. Well, I'm going to log off, guys. It's been fun chatting with you. Glad I got to show some of you the behind the scenes of how I stitch these together. Maybe I'll go live when I get further into the process. I don't know, but cool. Nice chatting with you. I'll log off now. Bye-bye.